Welcome back to my podcast, dear listeners. Last time I told you about my Palestinian friend, Dia. Today I'll tell you about Shrikant and the undeniable chemistry we shared. Molly had a classmate, Sridhar. He was a Tambram, Tamilian Brahmin. His older brother, Shrikant, was a few years older than me. Shrikant was probably from the same batch as Alex, the devilishly good looking bandmaster of our marching band at school. Now, Shrikant could break dance, he was academically bright, and I generally looked up to him. Shrikant and his classmates, to me, they looked like the elite, and I was in awe of them. They were all like tall and confident and smart, everything I was not. One New Year's Eve, Shrikant had invited his friends over for a New Year's party. At this time, they were all doing their post graduation. I guess they had more boys than girls. I'm not sure of the reason, but Shrikant invited me to his party. Having always admired him from afar, I was thrilled and I started dressing up with great joy. I thought finally Shrikant had noticed me and he's asking me out. I really wanted to look as beautiful as I possibly could for Shrikant. I was hoping he would like me and that this would go somewhere. The party started and Shrikant asked me for a dance. He held me ballroom style and danced with me. It was all very formal. I could feel the chemistry between us, and it was very intense and undeniable. I could see that both of our bodies were responding to each other. This made me very happy and dizzy. I was so hoping that Shrikant would be interested in me. Meanwhile, Mom was up to her antics, sending Molly upstairs to spy on me every few minutes. It was embarrassing and humiliating. After a couple of dances, and with me wishing that this moment could last forever, I felt Shrikant's hand shift very imperceptibly from the small of my back downwards. Shrikant was doing everything he could to resist the temptation of gliding his hand down to my butt. We were both in the same boat, feeling the insane attraction and desire. This was pretty unusual for me. I had never had such a spontaneous connection with someone, and I thought it was very special and telling. And I felt like Shrikant also would feel the same way. After the dance, Shrikant politely asked me whether I had enjoyed the dance. Flushed with desire, I replied with a smile and twinkle in my eye. It was a pleasure, emphasizing the word pleasure. I thought I had been very witty while conveying my feelings to Shrikant. Shrikant looked down at me and said he had asked because that's what you're supposed to do. It is the polite thing to do. I felt the blood drain from my face. I felt embarrassed. I knew beyond a shadow of doubt that both of our bodies were responding to each other and we were both feeling the same thing. Then why was he behaving like this? He was deliberately pushing me away and conveying that nothing would come of this. A friend of Shrikant, Madhav, was making his attraction known to me in no uncertain terms. He was almost salivating, like an animal in heat. He asked to dance with me multiple times, and when I did, I felt my body switch off, which was amazing because when I'd been dancing with Shrikant a few moments ago, I felt the heat so intensely. I felt so alive. And then, dancing with Madhav, like a switch turning off, I felt nothing. Then the next dance with Shrikant, and like a magnetic field around us, the attraction was palpable and almost an entity in its own right. I had never experienced such a blatant response from my body before to a boy, especially the instant on and off around the two guys. That was so interesting. But Shrikant had made his stance clear. Though I did not understand the reason, It may have been about his ambition to study abroad in the US and his laser focus on that. He did not have any girlfriend that I knew of. For the next few weeks, Madhav made it a point to drop by at Hillside in the evening and look out for me. I would cringe whenever I would step out for my evening walk and see him waiting over there, knowing that I did not want to spend any time with him. And he would keep trying. He told me that he was doing his CA. He tried to impress me with his intellect and future plans. And from that perspective, I definitely understood what he was saying, that if I chose him, we could have a good life together. We could be affluent and not want for anything. But at least in the romance department, I felt the intense need to be authentic to myself, to be true to myself. My only ambition in life was to have a loving marriage, one where we were in love with each other. How could I deny myself that? I felt nothing when I was with Madhav, and I wanted to trust my inner response to him. And especially having experienced the intense chemistry with Shrikant, I did not want to deny myself the chance of being with someone else who would hopefully invoke that response in me and would also feel that way towards me and express it. I could not deceive him and myself into something I knew was not true, and so I kept discouraging Madhav. Finally, one evening, when Madhav asked to join me on my walk, he understood that this was a wasted effort and he withdrew. I did not see him around Hillside again, and that was the end of that. Shrikant went on to do his post graduation in the US and he visited his parents occasionally. We interacted politely when we came across each other, and he would always compliment how I had lost weight and how I was looking better each time he saw me. At one point, he also said, "Now you've become too thin." And he reiterated, like, "This is too thin. The last time you were perfect, now you're too thin." So within my family, we made fun of his new accent. And so the Shrikant story was a non starter, passing away quietly in the womb, never seeing the light of day. I did try to build a rapport with a couple of other guys in Hillside who I thought it was possible to have a future with, but nothing came of it. I've heard of some guys only realizing years later that they were being flirted with. Or maybe it was a case of belonging to a conservative family and not wanting to get into the space of having a girlfriend from a different community. So they chose instead to go the conventional route and have their family choose a wife for them in an arranged marriage. On the other hand, were the creeps who would just try to take advantage of us. There were the usual suspects who would make blank calls and speak in a sleazy manner. And then some of them who would just call up and not speak, just breathe. There was this one army officer who was acquainted with us via, and he started visiting our house regularly, probably thinking of us as hunting grounds. Each time he came, all of us would get into the kitchen, prompting the other to go sit with him. He was quite a bit older than us, I feel. He gave us all the creep vibes, and nobody wanted to be around him. He was probably a dozen or more years older than us. We didn't know why he kept coming. Ultimately, I would be the one to go sit with him and make polite conversation. One day, he asked me to go with him for a movie. I told him we were not allowed. He leaned in close and said to me with a conspirational grin, "Don't tell your parents. Come in secret." I looked at this man in disgust. If he actually wanted to court one of us, he'd seek permission from our parents or put in efforts to try to get to know us. He never actually built a rapport with us or tried to be friends. It was pretty clear to me he was hunting and he just wanted to take advantage of us. If his intentions were honorable, he'd probably have asked one of us on a date properly instead of trying to sneak around behind our parents' backs. He was not some friend with whom a rapport had been formed organically that we would agree to kind of, go behind our parents' backs. He was this rando just older person walking into our house and taking advantage of our kindness. I just looked sternly at him and said, "No." And after that, thankfully, he never visited us again. I was 22 and had never had a long term relationship ever, even though that was the only thing I was longing for. Grover, my first boyfriend, so called first boyfriend, was a sham, even though I had thought of him as my first boyfriend. That was just an illusion. I had all this love to give and nobody to give it to. I focused on self improvement and being the best version of myself and being spiritual. That was all I could do while I waited restlessly to meet the love of my life. Next time, I'll tell you about an actual relationship, maybe. Till then, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye for now.